Alright children, this is your ICT sir. Welcome for another session of learning the electronic spreadsheet. In your government book, page number 7, electronic spreadsheets, this chapter we are going to learn about these following parts. First of all, we are going to learn about the fundamentals, functions and the operating of spreadsheet, identifying the components of the worksheet, trying to edit and enter data in a worksheet, simple mathematical operations and some few arithmetic logics we can learn there also. And then using cell functions and cell addresses, formatting the worksheet, using the relative and the absolute cells, and then creating charts. Now, one of my previous videos I have taught you about relative and absolute cell references. You can always go and watch those in my YouTube channel. So today now when you look at the 4 pictures that are shown right down below, you see people were so curious about how calculations are done. Some they used their own bare fingers to do the calculations. In later times, it was so hard where our minds were not so, it was not enough. So they thought, okay, let's bring some kind of equipment. And then they successfully made a wonderful calculation machines in the past. One of them is the abacus, and then later time people thought, okay, let us try for an electronical era. And then since the era was it's all about electronical media, so they developed a calculations machines such as calculators. And there were a lot. And then when it came to the modern day inventions, we have nowadays lots of softwares built. So one of those softwares that we can come across of doing calculations and manipulating data is none other than the Excel. So the Excel, we will learn what is actually Excel is all about. As the government book says, it's just like a square rule book that we normally did in school. So there was pages and there were columns and rows. As the electronic spreadsheet consists of multiple rows and multiple columns, based on this square rule book method, they have developed a very wonderful software known as the Excel spreadsheet or the electronic spreadsheet. Under that, there are things that we can perform. It says here, we can accurately and efficiently perform the following activities. What are those activities? It says that you can do simple and complex calculations, present data in charts, show data in an ascending and a descending order, segregate only a required data. If you want a portion of data to be just highlighted, you can do that. Check the validations of data, Protecting data using a password, that's a very important thing when it comes to data protection. Saving for a future use, yes, it's a very important thing nowadays. It's all about saving data for future use. Now there are some different softwares where company has made. For some are for paid softwares, and some are given as free softwares, like open source softwares, where you can use it for free, and some are paid software, like Microsoft organization, they use Excel, and then Apple Numbers, then LibreOffice, it's a calculation, and OpenOffice is also from Apache Foundations. So these kinds of softwares are some examples in the market nowadays. So today we are going to learn Excel 2010. Most probably you might learn both the Microsoft Excel and the LibreOffice. They are almost very equal. There are few things that is different from the other, but yet they do the same work. So going to the start menu, let's open the following chart or the following program. Go to all programs, Microsoft Office, and under Microsoft Office I'm going to open today Microsoft Excel 2007, since I don't have 2010. So you can just see how the 2010 is presented to you. Children, I want you to pause this video and go through the interface and the components of Microsoft Excel 2010, where you will see on top, starting from 1 and all the way to 19. There are 19 parts which are very vital for the children to communicate with the software. So take a little time, understand what its functions are all about. Most of you know what is a title bar, what are ribbons, and the control buttons. So over here you will see the quick access toolbar as the first. Out of these 19 parts that are mentioned as the user interface, there are few parts or a few components that you are to learn very well, and one of them, as shown down, is, I'll go through the book and I'll go down so quickly, and if you see the LibreOffice, it has the same interface, not much different. It has the same interface as the Microsoft Excel. Now over here it's asking about a worksheet. It's over here. What is a worksheet? A worksheet is made out of multitude of cells, made with columns and rows on a dimensional. So if you think of this, it's like you get columns and rows, and these columns and rows are given names, naming conventions. Each column, if you go and see, each column in Excel is given a letter A, B, C. So you can always say it's a column, A column, a B column, first row, the second row, the third row, so forth. And then what does the garment book says? There you are, A to Z, and you get a lot of numbers, not only A to Z, it can be AA, AB, so forth. Naming the rows in a worksheet, as you see, the columns represents a letter and the rows represents numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, so forth. And this is a very important thing. In Microsoft 2003, there are a number of rows are mentioned as shown below. So it's a good time to just pause your video and see how 2003 and 2007, 2010 has its columns and rows. And what is an active cell? Now, we knew that the columns are given a name, a row is given a number. What is an active cell? Here it says here it is needed to select, as it says, if you want to enter a data in one of these boxes. So here a cell is where a column and a row meets. So when a column and a row meets, we name this as an active cell. An active cell. So whenever you place your cursor in a box, in one of these boxes, and it highlights as a black, a dark cell. This dark cell is known as what? An active cell. So when an active cell is placed within, and if you add a data, for example, I can add name. Now the names that I have typed over here is in D4. There are some things that you have to learn about what are cell references. I'll come to that point, so forth. There are some key combinations where you can scroll within a worksheet. I want you to pause this video also and just try these shortcuts, the combinations of shortcuts, and see whether your cursor moves to its positions correctly. And then we are going to learn about cell addressing, or we call it as cell references also. Cell addressing, you are addressing a cell. So if you see over here, the name box itself says the name of the column and the name of the row are written as shown in this figure is that it is D3. So an active cell has two parts. One is the column name, and the next follows with the row. There are few cell references where you can learn. That's a single cell as it is mentioned. There are different ways of arranging cells. Some are arranged in column wise and some are arranged in row wise. Now over here, here it says here a range of cells, the adjacent cells. When you highlight them, those cells are known as cell ranges. Now if I highlight, let's go to Excel. If I highlight some values, let me just add some data first of all. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And if I select them by hovering it and dragging it with my mouse point pressed, now I have selected some data range. Now if I highlight them in a color, now you are to name them, not F5. You can't just say in the naming box as F5. You are to start the first cell, the starting cell, and the ending cell. You are to say using like the following. You can say like this: F5 to F9 are selected. Understood? Right, good. Let's select another cell, another few cells. So let me add a column wise 1, 2, 3, 4 and 4 and 5. Now if I select this by dragging its to its destination cell, now I can mention it with its starting cell. So the starting cell is F13 to J13. You got my point? Yes. Now there are some cells where you can select columns and rows together. Let's say I have highlighted this following cells. Now how do you refer these cells? Since the starting cell is D16, you can say D16 to G20. Here you are, 21. This is the starting cell, D16 to the final cell is G21. So anything that is around between the between all these cells are known as cell ranges when you select some cells. Now, my children, you have paused your video for a little while and there is an activity for you to do and see and answer me the following cell references if you can. I hope you can. It says, the first question, what is the address of the first cell represented by R1 in cell range? R1, here you are, R1. Starting cell is B, and I don't know what it is. You should know starting cell and the ending cell. So if I say what will be the answer, B22, the final cell is F2. I hope you understood. I want you to do this lesson and see whether you can understand that also. do the activity and enjoy the day. Right, welcome back. I hope you have done it. Now the next picture that you see on the screen is there are some informations written, typed in some of these columns and some of these rows. So A to E, there are some things written: name, district, province, telephone numbers and emails, and their details are done, shown over here. Now children, in a cell you can add range of data values to it, starting from an integer to a decimal and all the way for currencies. You can add any data values within a cell. In a cell, it's a very flexible cell where you can add any symbols or any values to a data, to a cell. Now the following worksheet that I have opened is all about a student named as Pradeep Achula Pereira and how he has scored for the first term and the second term, and the total marks and the difference between the first term and the second term, and the rank. He is good at ITS, I know, but he is very poor in history, I see. Yes, so over here there are some informations written over here in these cells. Now if I want to write a value in a cell, let's just say I need to just put 50, and you can use the data types given in the number sections, where you will find a small dialog cell formatting. If you just happen to click that, it presents you with some number systems. General number that you find over here is 50. For instance, if you really want to change it to a currency like a $, you can do so. There are plenty of symbols. You can select one of those symbols, and if you're happy with it, maybe you're still not enough, and if you really want to place 2 decimal values, maybe 2 decimal values, you can place it and click OK. Now the formatting has taken place, where you see a $, and it's $50. So cell is a very flexible box which you can add any values to it. Now if you are quite good with entering data and doing formatting to the data, now it's time for us to do some calculations. Now if you are to do calculations in Excel, there are 2 types, there are 2 ways you can do. One with using formulas, the other is using functions. Now what is functions? Functions are pre-built formulas. It's pre-built with a name given. It's pre-built, like using average, count. It's a pre-built name and the formula is built within it. Formulas, on the other hand, are day-to-day lives, like you use expression using equals, equal mark, and then you add the following values in in those particular cells. So for in this example, equal A1, the value of A1 is 2. A1 add with B1, and then in C1 you get your answer as 5. Very simple. Getting two values. So if you just happen to go to cell, over here I have made a simple total marks by adding not a formula but a function. I have used something called sum. Let me come to that point later, but I'm going to select this number M5. It has a value of 50, and then I'm going to select the following cell, this. Now 50 plus 35 equals to 85, and if I happen to click OK, now I get 85. Now over here in the formula bar, you see that there is equal sum A5. You can use the plus sign. A5 M5 plus N5, you get 85. So you can either use formulas or functions to do the mathematical. Okay children, now we will learn about the mathematical operators used in formulas in Excel. So these are the operators: plus and subtractions, multiplication, division, the power value, so forth, right? But there is a very secret over here. Whenever you do any evaluations of any operators, remember within the brackets the expression, whatever you add within the bracket, the expressions becomes first. So it evaluates the first. So for instance, if you go to Excel, Microsoft Office Excel, now for instance, if you really want to add, let's say equal, I'm going to put something like this in the bracket. I want to say 2 plus 2, so 2, and then multiplied by 5. So within the bracket, inside the expression that is inside the bracket is first done, and then only it follows with the other. So 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 multiplied by 2, 5 into enter, 20, you get the answer. So that's what it says about. Okay, and then these are the ways that you add them up. 2 to the power 4 is 16, 2 plus 4 is 6, and so forth. Now these are all formulas used without the cell addresses. So no cell address is used in this scenario. So I want you to pause this video and see how this method is done. So children, there is an activity for you. So I want you to do the following. and let me see your results in a few minutes. Now you come to a point where you are adding operators in and formulas in a cell address. So over here 45 and 24, sorry, and then you have to try to find the perimeter of the given length and the breadth. So here are some examples done. Always remember, when you are using an expression, it is very important for you to start with an equal sign and then follow your expression in a methodical order. It's nice to use brackets whenever you want to simplify your answer in the correct way. Here D2 equal A2 multiplied by B2 is wrong. It should be equal A2 multiplied by B2. There is another activity 7.18. There are few data values added in A, B, C, D, and E is the result. So if you add equal A1 plus B1, A1 is 7 and B1 is 5. So the value of A1 and B1 will be 12. So go through this, and then I want you to do the following answers, results according to this sheet. What will be the answer? The followings. Now we come to functions in Excel. So there are functions as you see on the screen. Some of the functions are sum, average, max, mini, count. So the syntax is shown below. Equal sum, you should type equal sum, and in the bracket, in between the brackets, you add the numbers either using a comma or a plus, or the sign of 2 is also used. I'll show you within a little time. Here are some examples of adding using the formula and then the function. See, equal A1 plus A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, so forth until A10. You get an answer, but it is much easy if you can use a pre-built formula, namely as sum equals sum A1 2 A1 2 A1 2 A10. You get the same answer. So writing a long string like this is too hard. It's easy to use this way, right? When you are adding, very especially when you are adding using the sum function, you can use equal sum A1 comma B1 comma B C1, so forth. Let me just show you that answer, the answer over here. Now over here it's 8. 8 plus 4 is 12. Correct. You can use equal sum A1 to C1. It gives the same value. You can use another way. You can use a range with a single cell. This is a complete range from A1 to C1. Here A1 to C1, and a single cell is also added. So it's 15. Here B1 to C2, that means B1 to C2, you get 20. Here two cell ranges, A1 to A3, A1 to A3, and C1 to C3. So if you add this up and this up, you get the answer of 35. This is a common, these are the 5 ways of you can add using equal sum. Another important function, average. Average also do the same way. You can add it single cell at a time or a cell range at one time, a cell range and a single cell at one time, or a complete range of cells at one time, or you can use two cell ranges, A1 to A3, C1 to C. Same way as you did in sum. Maximum, you have 4 ways of doing it here. Maximum gives you the maximum value of the given numbers. So here you get the same. Minimum does the other way around max, finding the least. It too has 4 ways of doing that. Count, very important function. It counts the number of cells, numbers of cells. It only counts numbers, not any other letter, text. No, it's not text, only numbers. So if you want, I can just show you an example. Let's go to Excel. Let's imagine that I have few numbers written down. Now, if I use this equal count, it says over here, the syntax says counts the numbers of cells that contains only numbers. So let's count. I want it from A1 to B1, C1, D, E, up to G1. A1 to G1. Using my bracket close, when I enter, I get 5 values over here. Why do I get 5 values? Because there is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 equals to 5 numbers. I hope you understood that too. And then you come to another activity. I want you to pause your video, do this, and see what do you get at the end of your worksheet. Let's come to another session of relative cells and absolute cell references. If you read this up to here, a class teacher calculates the total average of each student after the examination of the term. However, using electronic spreadsheets would make this task efficient. This is because one can copy the formula once applied to many other instances. Hence, let's let us look the steps how to do the following formulas. So when you come to Excel, you get this cell, and the bottom of the cell you get the fill handle, where you can always move a value from one to another or copy a cell range from one destination to another. So copying formulas can be done using the following fill handle, holding the fill handle and dragging to your destination cell. This following flow chart, Excel chart, the table, there is a student who has done some marks, and the marks are given as first term marks and second term marks. And if I really want to add them up, you have to decide whether you're going to use a pre-built function or a formula. Let me just use the function equal sum, and then I'm going to add this cell plus this cell, and I close my bracket and I get my answer. And as I told you, as I mentioned, if you want your fill handle to copy them down, you can drag it and bring it down where all your formulas are copied within its first instance to the rest of the cells. It's much easier than doing one at a time. So to find the difference, you can always use, again, this time I'm going to use a formula equal from the first term, from the second term, I'm going to subtract the first term, and I have 6 marks different from the first term to second term. So this is using a function and this is using a formula. I hope you understood that. Now children, if you find it so difficult to drag this fill handle down to its destination, now over here you get a bracket and 7. So I hope he is getting a minus value. First term 90, second term 83, so 7 marks less. So what you can do is, let me just delete this. You can always select this, go to copy, and then select the following cells that you want to have its instance of the first cell. Just copy it, you get the same answer as before. You can do it that way also, copy and paste, or bring the fill handler and drag until you prefer. Children, now learning charts are very important when it comes to compare with other children, or compare anything with any other possible thing that you really want to compare with. Now in this I am going to compare the first term and the second term. How did I do that? So over here in Excel you get insert charts. You get charts over here. So you can select various charts from the column to, if you want, you can just go and see how radar and so forth. You have all the charts mentioned over here, starting with column to radar. I'm going to take a column just to see the total values of the students. the first term. I can select one of the charts and click, and then I am being presented a blank chart without any data in it. So once you go over here, you get a design ribbon over here. Under the ribbon, you have something called a tool called Select Data. Click to it, and then it asks you where do you want to add, what data do you really want to add. I want to just add the subjects and the first term. And doing so, I get a new fresh first term start. If you go down, you see a glimpse of what you have done before you even can click OK. The information is displayed. Once you say OK, now you can do some chart layouts, maybe finding what you really want to add. Layer 7 says for me. It gives me another option of finding it little easy way. You can find what kind of layouts do you really want. You can just play around with what you really want. I would really love to have this. And then you can always change a chart, any preferable chart that you really prefer. That looks really nice. That's the first term. And if you are to take a pie chart like this, you can use something another. You can do it this way also. First of all, select the second way. What I do is I select first all these subjects and the second term and the first term, and then I go to insert and I select what chart do I really want. Let me just take a pie chart. Suddenly I get another chart of showing me, and then you can always go ahead with what you really want for the chart layout, maybe the positions. You have various types of charts, or you can use ICT, this, and the percentage, so forth. Right. Now in this scenario, what I did, I wanted to just see the difference between the first term and the second term. Now it's a different way of doing it. Let me just show you this by going to column. Now I'm not going to select any. I'm just going to select one chart. It's a blank chart. Now what I do is I go to select data and I select the first term and the second term. Right, children, let me select the correct data that I really want to get this first term and second term. I'm not going to select from this chart, from this table. I'm going to select it from this table. Select data. Let me move my dialog box somewhere here. I'll select the first term, second term, and its totals. And then I get this same thing that is presented over here. I click OK, and then I can use some kind of method to just bring this chart title, first term and the second term. You can play around and see how it works. Go around and see how it works, and it's very fun to do these charts and get a precise information about what you're looking for when you want to present data. Thank you for watching the following Excel video. Feel free to look into my next other Excel videos about absolute cells and so forth. So please make sure to go and subscribe and learn more about what our absolute cells are all about. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Right, children, we will learn about the relative and the absolute cell reference in Excel. If you read the following sentence, a cell address or the cell references consist of columns that includes letters and row as numbers. Columns as letters and row as numbers. In a formula, such a cell address is always called as a relative references. Okay, good. So let me just bring up the Excel. If I take a new sheet, now if I have a value in A1 and in B1, these are known as relative cells. Relative cells which contains a letter and of a column and a row number. Okay, that's what it says. They are relative cells. But it says here the dollar sign, when sign is placed before a row number, absolute row is obtained. When dollar sign is placed before a column name, an absolute column is obtained. Is placed before a column name and a row number. These are known as absolute cells. Over here it's a relative cell which does not have a dollar sign. The moment you put a dollar sign in between the two, this becomes an absolute row, because row has a number. Absolute row. But when you place the dollar sign in a letter, it's an absolute column cell reference. And if you place in before the letter a dollar sign, before the number a dollar sign, this refers as column and row absolute cells. So there are 4 cell references, as you see, relative and absolute. Let's learn what is relative cell references are all about. Here it says, if the row number and the column letter of the adjacent cell changes accordingly when a formula is copied, such addresses are called relative cell references. Now to demonstrate that, let me show you. Right here, children. Now over here you have a simple Excel sheet that represents few values over here. Okay, num1 has few values. The column A has 2, 3 and 4 as data. In row 2, row 3 and row 4. B as the same. So if I add this using a formula, let's add A value A1, A2 plus B2, my answer is going to be 5. Now if I copy this to the C3 cell, I surely should get A3 plus B3. So these cells, if it changes, they are known as it says, they are known as relative cells. Okay, so in an example, you see that you can either, when you copy a value, you can drag it to you can drag it towards the row side or the column side. This is towards the column, the letters, and this is towards the row. So I can do this by doing like this way. If I now drag this towards the column side, I got 5. Why did I get 5? Because now it's adding B2 plus C2. The value of B2, the adjacent cell. The adjacent of B2 is C2. If I drag this again, the adjacent of C2 is D2. So C2 plus D2. So these ways of changing its cells when it is copied is known as relative cells. Now we come to row absolute cell. What does it say? If a row number of the cell remains unchanged when the formula is dragged sideways along the row, it is called absolute cell reference. Absolute cell reference. When you use a formula and the row never changes. The row never changes. They are known as absolute row cell references. You get a simple information over here. Look at this example, sheet 7.35, where the piece of many pencils, prices of many pencils are derived when we know the price of a pencil. We know the price of a pencil is, how much is 10. So one pencil is 10, how much is a single pencil will cost? 2. So over here, let me demonstrate that to you doing in an Excel sheet. Okay children, let's try with a relative cell reference of trying to find if one pencil is 10 rupees, how much is for the following pencils are with the relative cell reference. Equal, I'm going to, yes, obviously 10 B2 should multiply it by the pencil. Yes, so if I enter, the first value is correct. So one pencil is 10 rupees. So now if I drag this down, why did I get zeros along the way? Because you see that the adjacent cell is A, B3. B3 does not have any value. So this is one way of finding it, what our relative cells are all about. But if I use the formula as it's shown in the textbook, using A2, the row, this is the row of the following B2, this way, can use the following formula. Well, so I'm going to use, let's say, B2, the row of B2. This is B2, absolute cell row of B2 multiplied by its adjacent cells, A1. Now if I drag this, I should certainly get the values of each pen, because why? This is a relative row cell references. Absolutes, not relative, absolute cell reference. Do you understand? I hope you got this point. So over here, B row is the absolute row cell reference when it comes to this scenario. Absolute row, absolute cell reference. Okay. Column, absolute cell reference. Now, column, it's all about a column. It says what does it say? If a column letter of the cell remains unchanged when formula is dragged along the column, it is called absolute cell reference. Along the column, this was dragged along the row. Now let's go and see along the column. Now children, I'm going to place my formula in the dollar sign to the column. Okay. Now I'm not going to go towards the rows, the column side. I'm going to drag it towards the columns, D column, E column. Let me see what's my answer is going to be. Why did I get 100 now? Well, on the way. So that means now the absolute B2 is multiplied by B2. It was A2 before, A2 over here. This is the A2. Now it will be B2. The absolute cell with B2. Now if you drag it now, it will be C2, B2. Do you see that? B2 plus C2, 100. Now it's 1000. So you should remember these are all thousands, 10,000, so forth. So along the column. Now children, I have made a small animation of what is relative cells and absolute cells. Okay. Now see, if you add over here, if you add C13 plus D13, C13 plus D13, it's 4. Even if I add here with using absolute column C17 plus D17, it is 4. Now if I see the adjacent cell of this cell C13 is D14. Okay. Now if I drag this now to this, I got 6. Now what is the adjacent cell of the following now? It will be D13 plus E14. So this adjacent cell changes to this now. You understand? This becomes 6 now. E13. Next time when I drag this, I got 10. So what is that means then? E13 remains as it is, and then the adjacent cell is this. So it changes its cells. It changes its adjacent cell one to another. But in an absolute cell, D17 column absolute and D7 column absolute. Now if I drag this, I still get only 4, and if I even happen to drag it furthermore, I will only get 4. What does it say? C17 plus D17, the values of C17. Here C17 and the D17 is always the value of answer is 4. So absolute, you should know that absolute cells never change its adjacent cells. Its data value remains untouched even when you are dragging it towards the column or the rows. So I hope you understood what our relative cells and absolute cells are all about. There are 4 types of relative cells, absolute cells. They are known as relative cell row absolute cell reference, column absolute cell reference, and column and row absolute cell references. Please take a time, go to the Excel sheet, feel free to do and test and see how it works.